Sidebar, Saturdays 9 to 10 on WOAI with the former Bexar County District Attorney, Nico Jorge, now trial lawyer, managing partner of LaHood Norton Law Group, and George Araujo, scholar, former chemist and pharmaceutical researcher and director. And does anyone in the room need to be pardoned? Let's get that out of the way right now, because apparently there are some... That is a question that I want to ask you today, but we're going to be talking about the, as you put it, George, the Biden pardon spree, which has started, of course, with his son, but now they're saying that there are many to come on what they're calling the preemptive presidential pardons list. We're also going to be talking about the tariffs, and I know when I heard that word tariff in the beginning, I'm like, is this something, how is this going to affect me? What is my life going to be all about? And then hopefully, if we get a chance, I want to talk about the Supreme Court's justices and their reaction to these laws banning gender transitioning. But back to...
In the Daniel Penning case.
Oh, yes. I've been watching that just with... I've just had my breath held, because I just think to myself, oh my gosh, is this going to happen to somebody? Are they going to put this guy in jail because he was trying to help people? And that message that is sent really scares me, because right here in San Antonio recently, we had a mom, Almas Park mom, Alamo Heights mom, missing. And apparently right before she went missing, a neighbor heard the husband and wife arguing, said, I'm staying out of it, closed the shades, nothing, I'm not going to get involved. And then she went missing, and now they're finding all kinds of things.
Yeah, I mean, just because someone gets in an argument doesn't mean they committed murder. But there's other things. There's other circumstantial
evidence. But if there's physical violence, you kind of want to,
evidence that leads up to making the suspect, Brad, whatever Simpson, I guess, in an interesting situation, to say the least. I've done a number of videos on it over the last 2 weeks. But get involved in a situation, it has its risks. I mean, obviously for Daniel Penning, it has its risks because he's been prosecuted by an insane prosecutor. I would have never prosecuted this case, and this is an easy one. This is not a hard one at all. But there was a case when I was DA. Excuse me. I got a call on a Sunday, 11 o'clock. I was in church, and there was a gentleman who had dropped off his wife at a Walmart, like many husbands do, and I'll wait outside and go inside for 20 minutes. And there was an individual who was dragging a woman through the parking lot and assaulting her. So he looked around. He drove up. He didn't drive right close to him, but he drove in the vicinity and just rolled down his window to say, hey, just to let him know if someone's watching you. Hey, he didn't even get out of his car. Well, the guy pulled out a gun and shot him in the head.
Oh, my God.
So his wife, jumps out of the car 20 minutes earlier, says, okay, let me just get something really quick. Comes back to her husband dead in the car. So you have to weigh things out, no doubt about it. But Daniel Penning did the right thing. Everyone in the subway was saying how scared they were. Every ethnicity, since that seems to be an issue right now, who gives a crap about ethnicity when you're talking about facts and truth. But and he got involved, and this guy was all jacked up on drugs. And I've seen cases that I'm talking superhuman strength, and you can see in the video that he makes a second surge to get up. That lifts, so he has to hold on. I can't tell you how many situations you see where there's a self-defense motto that says, if you're kind to your enemy, you're cruel to yourself, right? Meaning that if you don't fight to win in a self-defense situation or a use of force situation, then you're going to lose. There's been officers who shoot one time when they're justifiable to shoot because they're afraid of the consequences, and you can still move. If you're shot not in a vital organ, I mean, people have been shot and then turned around and still shot or still fought for a while, and then they drop. And officers have been shot because they only shot once instead of shooting to stop, center mass. So there's so much to talk about and I do a lot of self-defense cases, use of force, self-defense, defense of third person, which this is what this is right here, use of deadly force. And this is an easy one. This is a travesty to me of justice. Now that all the evidence is out there, this man waived his rights. He didn't know that the individual had passed away at the time. But he spoke to police officers. He had nothing to hide. He's talking. Yeah. Everyone was terrified. This guy says, I don't care if I go back to prison. You don't know what's in his bag. He could have easily pulled something out of his waistband. I mean, this is not difficult. And then if you really think that Daniel Penning did something wrong, then why aren't you prosecuting the other people that are around there, not stopping him or actually helping him restrain this guy?
The video is there.
I mean, if you want to talk about a George Floyd situation, could this be in that same vein? I mean, there's just a lot to discuss on a case like this. And so there's something significant that happened in that case where the state moved to dismiss count one, because that's where they were deadlocked on count one. And
the most serious charge.
The most serious charge, the manslaughter charge, the facing 15 years. And so the jury's supposed to make a unanimous decision on count one before they move down to count two. And so they made a decision. The judge granted it, which usually happens that way. The judge is usually going to grant a state's motion to dismiss. Now, the defense was making a strategic decision, like, well, I don't want to dismiss. I want to mistrial so we can just start this thing over again, because you don't know where you're at.
Yeah.
Now, if they knew they were at a 10-2 not guilty, well, then, man, keep deliberating. Judge, give an Allen charge. You call it a dynamite charge. Charge them again. Keep pushing them. Sequester them, which I can't believe that wasn't discussed, and I don't know what the New York law is on it. It's not constitutional, but it's a state issue. There's just a lot here, Karen. I know you love this stuff, but there's a lot here, and we can talk more about it, but it's a big case.
It is. George, how come you're just sitting there? Do you have any comments?
A question. I have a question.
Yes.
So I guess in what universe is criminally negligent homicide a lesser charge than manslaughter?
It is in every universe.
So
what are the differences?
I'm begging the question. Define the difference.
Well, so recklessness is when you're aware, but you consciously disregard a substantial or unjustifiable risk. You're aware that choking someone in a rear naked choke could close off their breathway and could cause death. Criminal negligence standard in most terms, in most states, is you're not necessarily aware, but a reasonable person. You heard that talk in this case about what a reasonable person would do. And that's why the jury asked back, what's the definition of reasonable person based off these circumstances? So reasonable person standards would have done and should have been aware of the substantial and unjustifiable risk. So criminal negligence is essentially you ought to have been aware. So it's a lesser standard. So normally in a case like this, if you're defending a murder case, you get reckless, you get manslaughter or crim neg, that's a huge victory. In Texas, 5 to 99 or life to max 20 to max 10. That's a victory. But in this case, it's not a victory. You want it all. You want all of it gone. So the state is making a strategic decision. They're thinking usually a lesser included verdict is a compromise verdict. Like, we don't think it's this, but okay, we'll go with this one. We can all agree on this one. And again, it really comes down to where are the jurors on this? Is it 10-2, 8-4, 6-6, or is it 10-2 guilty? I don't know. You just never know. And sometimes a jury will accidentally say, hey, we're 10-2 not guilty, deadlocked. We don't know what to do. Man, that gives you a lot of information. I would want to know that if I was the defense counsel.
Does it seem, would any reasonable person conclude then that the same thing is going to happen here with the second charge? Because the facts of the case don't change just because it's a different charge. So the ambiguities that rested on the first one are probably going to overlap to the second.
But the standards changed. And so, from my understanding, I didn't watch the trial, but something that I read and heard was that each witness didn't help Daniel either. There was things like even his self-defense instructor or whatever from the Marines said, well, you didn't have to hold on that long. So there can be a point where you're wrong. So you can be justified in acting, but not justified in keep acting. What do I mean? So let's say someone is trying to bother Karen or assault Karen outside when you and I walk out. And then we don't think it's deadly force. It's just verbal. Get away, get back. He gets physical. I punch him. He falls down. I have every right to punch him. Defense of self and defense of third person. But then I keep stomping on his head. So now I've taken it too far. Or he's banging Karen's car door, which is a crime. You're hurting her car and damaging her car. But then I shoot him. Well, she wasn't in risk of serious bodily injury or death at that time. Now, can I articulate that? Would I come up with a defense? Sure. But I'm just saying, so you can take it too far. They're arguing that maybe he had a right to act, but he didn't have the right to keep choking. And at some point, he should have let go. The defense of that is, look, this guy kept surging. Right. He felt his strength. Yep. Everyone was terrified. No one did a body search. What was in his bag, his waistband? Again, you let him go and you can put yourself in harm's way and other people. So it's the battle. Yeah. So you can see where a jury is toiling with this. And I just think that there's going to be some people on that jury that ride that subway and it's like, there's no way in hell I'm voting guilty. I think you end up with a hung jury maybe. I don't know. I mean, this is interesting. I really wanted a quick verdict.
Don't you think, though, that in New York, and I hate to even say this, but don't you think in New York, a jury of your peers is harder and harder to find because there are so many things going on in New York that put emotions and feelings and things that are outside of the law when it comes to the jury of your peers and a white man that killed a black man. You don't think that has anything to do with what may be going on with that jury?
Well, yeah, look, I mean, you have BLM outside protesting. Does that weigh in on them? Of course I think it's going to weigh in on them. If this was a black man that choked out another black man, this would not be going to trial, or a white guy on a white guy. Let's just talk facts. It would not, especially with that DA's office, it would not be in trial. This would not be in trial. And I will stand by that. And I think I can defend it and justify it. And I think most reasonable, objective people will agree with that. That's a reality. And then you have protests outside. People are thinking, you think these things, people are human. I would not have let the jury go. I would have sequestered them. Now, I don't know what New York laws are on sequestering. In Texas, you cannot sequester a misdemeanor jury. It's not you don't have a constitutional right to sequester. But on a felony case, either side can sequester, and they will not know who did it. It could be the government. It could be the defense. And I wouldn't let them go. On something like this, you're going to get jury instructions saying, don't look at the media, please. I mean, it happens all the time.
Weekend.
You have a spouse saying, honey, what's going on? This is what I think. Did you know? I didn't know. Hold on. Well, I don't know, babe. And there's outside influence. I would not want anyone, you typically don't want to break up a jury once they're in that hot of deliberation. You want them to press in.
Okay.
Keep deliberating.
We're going to take a break right now, but we will be right back with more. We have so many things to talk about. I hope you stick with us and get on social media. We'll be right back.
With reputations as respected high-level prosecutors in Bexar County, the attorneys of LaHood Norton Law Group bring invaluable practical knowledge from the other side of the aisle, using over 70 years of combined experience to strategically advocate clients' rights and pursue the best possible outcome.
I'm Nico LaHood with LaHood Norton Law Group. Have you been arrested or accused of a crime? The LaHood Norton Law Group has the knowledge to defend you regardless of how small or large your case. In Bexar County, anywhere in the state, or even nationwide, we have the knowledge to defend you in federal or state court, no matter how small or large your case. We are trial lawyers with proven success.
Using their 70 years of combined experience to strategically advocate for their clients' rights and pursue the best possible outcome. The LaHood Norton Law Group. For a free consultation, call today. 210-797-7700. 210-797-7700. LaHoodNorton.com.
This is Nico LaHood. If you or a loved one has been arrested or accused of a crime, we can help.
LaHoodNorton.com.
1200 WOAI, this is Sidebar. When I said get online, that means get on a social media platform.
It's kind of interesting. A lot of people got online earlier today, so it's pretty interesting. Thank you for logging on to sidebartv.com, and you'll find where you can reach us on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. I want to thank these people logging on. He says, look at this. No matter what, Carlos says, no matter what, maybe Trump will pardon him on day one.
He can't.
He can't.
Nope. It's a state. It's a state offense. He can only pardon federal offenses.
Okay, and then Kathy says this. I have a feeling jurors can be paid off easier these days. That's what Kathy says.
No, I don't think so at all. There's no evidence of that. In the old days, in the 80s, the mob days with John Gotti and Gravano and all that happened a lot, especially in New York. Now the state governor can pardon Daniel, but not the president.
No.
Ray says, don't you think that BLM protesting outside will intimidate the jury?
Yes.
Oh,
yeah, I do. George, we cut you off.
What I was going to say is that concern about about tainting the jury pool in that way. I mean that there's no evidence that happens here in the United States, but we dodged a bullet in the sense that is the system that we were going to head to.
Yeah,
had Kamala Harris won. There's no question about it. This is not atypical in communistic countries or authoritarian countries where corruption just runs roughshod. That would have been not a bug, but a feature.
It still kind of irks me when I hear people say it's a Democrat judge or a Republican judge. I'm like, isn't a judge not supposed to have a letter behind his name?
Yeah, it's supposed to. And that's why I'm a big advocate for county and district court judges to be nonpartisan races. Like
it's a good idea.
It really is. Now, when you get into appellate courts and courts of appeals, I get it because there's an ideological shift and they're setting and they're making rules on case law and things of that nature. I got that. But in the courthouse, I promise it really doesn't matter. And look, this is one thing that I depart from, and I'll tell everyone at the right time. There are some Democrat judges here in Bexar County that are great. There's some that suck. There have been some Republican judges in the past that sucked, and some that have been great. So when it comes to jurists in the trenches on county court and district court cases, and district court cases include family law, divorces, contract disputes, any type of lawsuits, district court judges for criminal cases, and prison and probation, deferred adjudication, dismissals, speedy trial motions, things of that nature that are the nuts and bolts of our society. There are good judges that whatever D or R by their name is really irrelevant. You have to go off their stats. And if you take away the label, it'll force people to educate themselves about the judge. That's what we need to get back to, at least on the district court and the county court level.
So if you know, I'm not a lawyer. I don't even play one on TV. But the question that I keep on having myself, isn't there supposed to be a crime when you give a pardon, a preemptive presidential pardon? Like, can you just pardon people? Like I saw on Babylon Bee, somebody said, just in case President Biden is going to give a pardon to whatever Hunter does between 4 a.m. and 11 a.m. tomorrow. It's like, wait a second, nothing's happened. How can you pardon something that hasn't happened? And that's my big question as we talk about all of these. Well, it's happened.
No, they're pardoning what may have happened. It's a speculative
It's
pardon
not for
from the
future,
past.
too?
Not for future. You cannot pardon for future acts.
And so what crime did Fauci commit? I mean, we know, but there's been no charge, a formal charge against Fauci or Cheney, or who else are they talking about that they're going to give a blanket pardon to? I guess I don't understand.
His brother. Look, it can happen. I mean, so you can talk about, because these are acts that have already theoretically occurred, and they're speculative in nature. And the Constitution doesn't limit the timeline and how far back you can go. But it has to be federal. So we talked about that with Trump. But you cannot pardon future crimes, or else can you imagine what presidents would do moving forward, or governors moving forward? Just say, I'm going to pardon Joe Blow or Fulano for everything they're going to do, or Saulo. Then that's just, you can't do that.
But if there's no crime, no formal crime, no charge, how can you pardon someone?
It's a speculative thing. Because there's investigations. I mean, there was talk about when President Trump, before he left office last time, that he was going to pardon Ken Paxton for all the stuff that potentially, but I'm not saying Ken did anything wrong. I know Ken and I like him, and no, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that was the talk, because allegations, and there was an investigation of past behavior that had already happened. And so he could do that. He hadn't been formally charged. And so you can do that for past acts, or past speculative acts, or potential acts, but not future.
Discovered or not. And I think what's outrageous here, though, it is truly unprecedented. And you can see what's going on. I mean, this is a blanket pardon from January 1st of 2014. And the 2014 number isn't accidental, to December 1st of 2024. Why 2014? And that's really where the genesis of the Ukrainian charges, money laundering, father-son dealings, and all of that, whistleblowers have come forth. There's considerable evidence. So this isn't so much I'm really concerned about Hunter, and I feel like he's being
my only
improperly
son.
targeted by the way, by his legal system, by his Department of Justice. It occurred to me that he's concerned that the legal system is being misused against his son, and yet it's his legal system. Basically, it's his Department of Justice that's doing this. He didn't seem to be too concerned when it was targeted at Trump, but seems to be very concerned now that it's allegedly targeted at Hunter. I thought that was quite telling. Mm-hmm. But it's a blanket pardon, not so much limited to Hunter, interestingly, but also to himself, and really to his closest aides, including his brother Jim, who have come out in various records and testimony of wrongdoing. So this is really something else. I don't think I've seen this kind of in your face. You're
not going to get us.
It's another black eye to the Democrat Party. I mean, you have Democrats even pissed off. Everyone, look, I mean, what's his name? Scott Jennings from CNN. That guy's a superstar lately, man. I didn't know who he was until George kind of educated me on him. Then I started watching his videos a while back, and he's just kicking their ass. And he says, I don't want to hear anything about Trump anymore. I don't want to hear how he's going to weaponize the justice system. I don't want to hear how he's going to favor his friends. I don't want to hear any of that anymore. Because Biden really left a black eye on the media. All of them said, now look, you're seeing an adult in the room, and you're seeing this dichotomy and this split between a baby and someone trying to abuse. And here's an adult. Here's someone that respects what's that phrase we kept hearing? Respecting the rule of law. I thought Someone sent me a video on Jon Stewart. Jon Stewart, for as much as I disagree with him politically, he's funny and he's an equal opportunity offender. And he did a funny one, and he was really funny about it. And I just think the Democrats, for once in a long time, are in disarray. For one time, they don't know what they stand on because they built their house on straw, on a foundation that wasn't solid. The ideas were terrible. The ideas actually sucked, not just terrible, because you saw that the ramifications of them and the consequences of them. And people are seeing that. Look, it's not an accident as you see this thing play out that Trump's popularity now during the transition is higher than during the election.
Truly.
Because they're seeing that he's following through. They're seeing temperance. They're seeing the overreaction of the left again. I think you're seeing a lot of people that stayed home and didn't vote. They're thinking, man, this is good stuff. And I think he has a wonderful opportunity. I said it last week, to really garner even more support starting now. He's already starting. Forget about the first 100 days, like George said earlier.
They've already started.
They've already started, but he's starting now. And I think there's an opportunity to not lose the House in 2 years. You know how that switch goes on the off season, on the off cycle. I think there's a wonderful opportunity to garner even more support, George, and to really solidify support for Republicans for decades to come if it's played right by the party. Not just because Trump's there 4 more years. And if the Lord leaves him on this earth longer than that, then he can still have an influence over people. But is he truly going to leave a legacy moving forward? Biden was worried about it. His is crap. Trump's has an opportunity. And it's really spectacular to see what's happened over the last 2 years.
Yeah, it truly is. And I love that he's getting busy. I have a question for you because I think this is going to come back to bite.
Biden.
You know, indeed, Biden and his closest aides, who he is considering pardoning, even to include shady characters like Alejandro Mayorkas, and
I say shady characters.
Well, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for clarifying.
I'm going to plead the fifth on that. Let me talk about that pleading the fifth as it pertains to this, Nico.
Mm-hmm.
So they're not protected from future crimes. This is a blanket pardon, but it's not. It doesn't affect future crimes.
Correct.
And I wonder if they thought this through because there's an upside here. If a person can't be prosecuted, then they can't invoke a Fifth Amendment protection against testifying against themselves. So there are ongoing investigations going on in Congress. Those are not going to stop. There's legitimate wrongdoing that has happened here, legitimate wrongdoing, and a pretty compelling tale of corruption as it pertains to the Bidens. So if these individuals who are pardoned on a blanket basis from 2014 to 2024, if they're called in, they would still be subject to perjury and obstructive of justice charges because they could lie under oath. And even if they refuse to testify, because if you refuse a subpoena like that, I mean, you could be incarcerated for that.
Yeah.
Just ask Peter Navarro. But the point is, you've got somebody testifying. If they perjure themselves, they can be tossed into jail. If they're subpoenaed and they refuse to come in, they can go to jail. So I don't think this is going to go away. And I think you're going to have instances where this could legitimately happen. I'm not sure they thought this through. Maybe they're just
it's damage control. It's damage control, right? I would think, because if you subject yourself to perjury or contempt of court or some type of obstruction, it's considerably less range of punishment than the investigation was initially. But you're 100% right, George. The Fifth Amendment right goes away. So if it goes before a grand jury, not just a congressional hearing, before a grand jury, you have the same issue, and he can't plead the fifth. And if they have any evidence and they can put him in a box, he's either going to have to make pretty harsh admissions that's going to reverberate and really have a negative effect on a lot of things, or he's going to subject himself to being punished criminally.
That's right.
If they follow through, which I hadn't.
That's what I want to know. Right.
Pam Bondi, man, this chick is insane. She's going to do it. I mean, she's a fire.
So I don't think this is going away. I think you could see Hunter Biden legitimately be forced to testify in front of a committee about crimes that were committed by others. That's fair game.
But what could happen to President Biden? He has immunity because he's the president?
Well,
or is this stuff that happened before he was the actual president?
It's before, and that was the whole debate, and that was the whole fight. And now, what I always say, be careful the world you help create, because someday you may have to live in it, right? When it comes to filibuster, when it comes to anything that it comes back and bites them in the ass. And so this is one of those situations where, okay, so if Trump has immunity, then what's the definition of immunity? A presidential act, not a presidential act? And it comes back to those definitions again. So Biden has immunity for everything he did while he was president. Not before, though.
I don't expect Biden to be held criminally liable in any way or liable in any way. I think that ship has sailed. But I think this brings us some silver linings. It'll shine a very bright light on the extent to which the Democrat Party has been corrupted, and others. And so I think it's important for Americans to see that, even if individuals don't go to jail. That said, I also don't think you can pardon enough people. This is a tangled web, and there's a lot of individuals involved here. So even though Hunter Biden can't be prosecuted for the crimes for which he's been pardoned in this blanket pardon, this pardon spree, he could definitely be prosecuted for obstruction of justice if he refuses to testify, and so he could be liable there. But I just don't think he can pardon enough people. If other names are going to be invoked, other wrongdoing is going to come up, and this is going to be important for the country to see. This should not just go away.
What I hope they do, though, is this can't be the focus. It has to be a side angle. You keep doing what you're doing on the border, on the economy, on the world stage, and then also do this stuff because it needs to happen.
But they can't just let it go.
No, you can't. No, you can't let it go because you want to prevent it in the future. But you don't want to look like it's a witch hunt or that you're doing what exactly they're claiming you're going to do.
Alamo Talk says, will it make everyone feel better when Trump pardons January 6th?
Well, I don't know. Not all of them should be pardoned.
Yeah.
Not all of them blanketly. When you say that they should all be pardoned, that's not...
When you knock a window out of the...
But he's been talking about that for a long time.
Yeah. But there's certain people that have been in custody that shouldn't have been in custody.
Okay. We're going to take a break. Stay with us. We'll be right back with more on Sidebar.
San Antonio's news, weather, traffic, plus breaking news 24/7. This is News Radio 1200 WOAI from the GiveMeTheVin.com Sell Us Your Cars studio.
New York police believe they've found a backpack belonging to the gunman who shot and killed the CEO of United Healthcare on the Manhattan sidewalk. The NYPD found the gray backpack in Central Park, where they believe the suspect ditched his bag. Meanwhile, the FBI has joined the investigation. There is reportedly a $50,000 reward for information leading to an arrest of the suspect. President-elect Trump is visiting Paris today for the official reopening of the renovated Notre Dame Cathedral. French President Emmanuel Macron will deliver an address at today's ceremony. The Intrepid Museum will commemorate the 83rd anniversary of the attack on Pearl Harbor today. Jennifer Polsoni reports.
Families of local Pearl Harbor survivors attending the ceremony aboard the ship in the hangar deck of the Intrepid Museum.
Sabrina Carpenter is iHeartRadio's top artist of 2024. iHeart unveiled its iHeartRadio Rewind lists ranking the top artists and songs of the year. I'm Rob Martier.
From the WOAI Traffic Center.
Over on 35 northbound at Brooklyn, we have an accident that has the two left lanes blocked at the moment. On Loop 1604 eastbound on the frontage road between Lookout Road and IKEA Parkway, got that roadway down to just the left lane closed due to some construction. I'm Alexis, News Radio 1200 WOAI.
This report is sponsored by Macy's Backstage. Macy's Backstage has amazing deals on the holidays' most fun gifts, all for under $15. Get low prices every day on unique finds before they're gone. In-store only at Macy's Backstage today. Find a location near you at macysbackstage.com. Off price, on trend, arriving daily.
You've achieved outstanding things in your life. Your home should be your haven. Haven Builders will turn your vision for a luxury home into a reality. After more than a decade helping Fortune 500 companies soar even higher, Haven Builders owner George Araujo has adapted his management expertise and attention to detail to the residential, design, and planning process. Expect a seamless, stress-free process. Expect exceptional quality. Expect to be impressed. Haven Builders. HavenSA.com.
1200 WOAI, thank you so much for listening. And please make the time to join us online because we are on several platforms and we continue after the show and we'd love for you to be part of the conversation. So one of the topics that we have to talk about is tariffs. And so many people, or I should say so many editorials that I've read have said, oh my God, we are going to have items it may try and fix the economy eventually, but we're not going to be able to afford anything anywhere because the economy is going to get wrecked before it gets fixed. What is all of this talk about the tariffs and Trump actually just wanting to even the playing field by saying, you're not going to take us anymore, China, Mexico, Canada. This is evening the playing field for America. So why the negative news? Can you explain that, George?
Well, I mean, the reality, Nico, is that this should have a pretty good press effort coming from the Republicans, and I don't really see much on it. And there's just a lot of old wives' tales around tariffs, and I think it's unfortunate. There is a reason why the Biden administration has retained those tariffs and why they're actually higher under Biden than they were under Trump. But Trump has come forward and said, yeah, they kept those tariffs, but they're not doing it right. So there's an it behind it. There's a rationale behind it. And I think what's not explained to people is that there's very different systems of taxation. A tariff is a tax. So in the United States, a company produces product and there's this thing called an income tax. They're taxed here. We have a production-based tariff system or tax system, whereas the rest of the world really, by and large, has a consumption-based tax system. What that means is just as it sounds, that it's a consumption tax. So the problem here is that when companies here produce products, they're taxed, income tax. They ship them, and then that country invokes another tax on them, a tariff. This has been going on forever.
Yeah.
A consumption tax. So basically, we're at a disadvantage because we're getting taxed twice, and that inequity has to be addressed. If a company overseas in China or anywhere else produces products and sends them to the United States, they're not taxed. Those exports are not taxed at all. They're not doing it, and we're not doing it. But if you're producing product here and you're shipping them over, you're getting taxed here, income tax wise, and then you're getting taxed over there. So I think there's an opportunity here. I think the opportunity is pretty straightforward. You ought to credit back to companies with these tariffs that you invoke. Finally, you ought to credit back to these companies so there could be some offsetting of those double costs. And calculations have been run on this. We're talking about over the next 10 years, something like $1 trillion credit to companies. So there's a method behind the madness. And I think there ought to be better communication about this so that people understand these grotesque inequities that have been going on for decades. And it's time that we don't just have free trade, but indeed fair trade. So that's the first gripe that I have. Go ahead, please.
Well, no, I think this goes to where Trump is also like an underpinning issue is why he's picking the people he's picking. These people can talk the way George is talking about it and can educate and go on the news outlets and talk about why they're doing what they're doing, what the government is doing, and what's the culture, what we're trying to accomplish, and what's our goal. Yeah. I mean, historically, tariffs drive up prices, to George's explanation, and then cause inflation. That's the big boogeyman in the room. But we can see just the threat of the tariffs is effective. I mean, look, you got that, what's his name, the Prime Minister from Canada tiptoeing through the tulips and coming down here.
Trudeau.
He couldn't get his ass down here quick enough, and everything's so fine.
I love what Trump's holding.
He's got I know about being the 51, and Bernie Sanders agreed with that, by the way. Bernie Sanders is okay with Canada being the 51st state. But and then the Mexican president, she's talking to Trump. Stopping the caravans. It's interesting when you have a true leader. I mean, this guy's not. He is the de facto president. The world is treating him like the president. You have the French president invited him to Notre Dame for the opening. I mean, they're treating him, and that tells you what a lame duck president Biden is. I mean, he's still doing gaffes. He's still wandering off. He's still going on vacation. He can, he knows enough to pardon his son. But it's so shameful. It really is shameful. And the Republicans have an opportunity here. Trump has an opportunity that he seems like he's seizing it. I hope the rest of the party does as well, to really bring people in, educate them. Just say, look, it's not a nanny boo-boo. It's not too bad. No, it's just like, come. These are the ideas we wanted to bless you with. The party has changed. The party has moved in a different direction. It's not what you think. The Democrat Party isn't your granddaddy's party, and the Republican Party isn't your granddaddy's party either. So look at what's happening. Look at the coalition. Look at the true inclusion, not the BS standard that you guys used to set, and really have a chance to bring people in. I think it's a wonderful opportunity. And let's see what they do with it.
I love that just the whole dynamic has been educational for Americans. I hope. I love that it's an opportunity, Nico, because there's a reason why they come running. There's a reason why Trudeau, and I'm sorry, but Mar-a-Lago is really the new de facto White House.
No, kidding. You're right. You're so right.
In case you haven't noticed.
Has Elon Musk left yet? No.
It's the place to be.
Yeah.
Because we only really have one active president. Everybody knows that. I think it's unfortunate, but it is true. There's a reason why they're coming. There's a reason why Claudia Sheinbaum in Mexico freaked out. There's a reason why there's an immediate response. Why is that? Are Americans wondering, okay, why? I mean, why not? If Trump's wrong, if he's dead wrong, and this is going to be calamitous for him, why don't they just let him fail on his own? Why come running? Mm-hmm. So what's that issue? And what's that issue is because
he says too.
I know he means business.
Nico, they need us far more than we need them. Let's let that sink in. You guys need to understand, if you don't already, and I'm sure we do. We're talking to an educated audience here, but I want to stress this point because it's important. Mexico's exports to the United States constitute over a third of their economy.
Wow.
Whew.
Whereas our exports to Mexico are about 1.3%.
Mm.
So just consider that for a moment. Mexico's exports to the United States make up a third, 33.3% of their GDP. Whereas it's the opposite with the United States. It's only about 1.3% of our GDP. Look at Canada. There's a reason why Trudeau came running.
Well,
exports to the United States and Canada make up about 1/5 of their economy.
Wow.
And for us, it's comparable to Mexico. Our exports to Canada constitute about 1.4% of our economy. And in China, what do they say? Forget about it. I mean, China, seriously. I mean, we export about 1/4 of what they export to us as a share of the economy. Let me put it in terms of jobs. About 1 million jobs in the United States are related to exports to China. Whereas in China, it's about 20 million of their jobs.
Are you kidding?
So it's night and day.
Wow.
So there's the question of this imbalance, which has to be addressed. And that is what Trump is trying to get at. If you just look at NAFTA, and I think people ought to remember that, NAFTA was, the inception of NAFTA was really during the Clinton administration in 1994. In 1993, the year before NAFTA, our trade deficit was around $115 billion. North America, free trade agreement, Canada, Mexico. Today, it's over $800 billion.
Wow.
Okay, that's unsustainable. Trump's saying unacceptable. We're not going to get robbed anymore.
But he's been saying this for decades.
Yes.
I mean,
I know.
to give Trump, be fair, even his detractors, Trump has been talking the same way, maybe not the same, his expressions are a little different, but he's been saying the same issues.
Right.
China, America's not great anymore, all this other stuff, we need to make America great. I mean, he's been talking about these same trade and foreign affairs for years, back when he was on Donahue, when he was on Oprah, before she was nuts. I mean, all this stuff. I mean, he's been saying the same thing. If you want to call balls and strikes, I mean, Trump's been saying, and now he's following through with this. So he's been consistent about this. And you're exactly right, George, about this inequitable relationships that we've had. It's this, what have you done for me lately? And the United States has been treated horribly, and Trump wants to just fair. I love that you said that. Yeah, it's fair trade. He wants fair trade.
Free and fair.
Yeah, free. Yeah, exactly. But I mean, if it's not fair, it's not free. So I'm with you. So,
and I think people are probably wondering, how the hell did it get this bad? And I think, and Trump keeps coming back, it's the stupidity of our leaders. No, it may have once been a good idea, and I think originally it was. This really started sort of in the aftermath of World War II. Europe was decimated as a result of World War II. Our economy was thriving. Mm-hmm. And so it should have been a temporary gimme where we let them tariff us so that they can come up for air at some point. It never changed. It's been a 70-year debacle.
Wow.
And so leaders haven't stepped up. And so Trump says enough already, and he's making a very simple point. We have nothing to worry about. We're going to get exactly what we need. He's very confident about this. Why? Because their exports to the United States constitute much larger shares of their economy.
He knows
follow the money, baby.
They just don't have a choice. They really have to fall in line.
They can complain all they want. At the end of the day, this would be devastating to Trudeau. And I love that Trump sat there. I don't care that. I love that people are freaking out about it on the left, but he sat there and said, look, you wouldn't have this problem. Just let Canada become the 51st state, and we'll be in good shape. You can just become the 51st state, and you'll come under our umbrella, and we'll take care of your problems.
We'll let you be the governor.
That's hilarious. It wouldn't be the first time that America's annexed, another state. But
when it comes down to negotiating,
I wouldn't mind.
You understand the three elements of good negotiation, right? With your opponent, you have to have superior knowledge, you have to have superior patience, and you have to have more options.
Yeah.
And Trump understands that. I mean, he knows that as well as anybody else. He understands the tariffs and the true effects of it. He has more patience. He goes, to George's point, he's like, you need us more than we need you. And he has more options because we're not dependent on them in these certain areas. Now, he wants to make that the same issue with oil. And that's why he's saying drill, baby, drill. And he wants to be an exporter of oil. He wants to do that again and make that more.
We know it's possible, too.
But you see the game.
We have more oil under us than anyone else.
Oh, but I love that he's talking about this because there's a whole other benefit, Nico, is that we will get those companies repatriated back to the United States. If, in fact, Trump brings a balance to these inequities, then you tell me, Karen, if you've got a company in another country, what exactly is the incentive anymore? Because if you're producing over there and shipping to the United States, you don't get taxed over there and you don't get taxed over here.
Right.
But now, I don't know. Why not come back to the United States? It becomes much more compelling. And can you imagine the notion of rebuilding our manufacturing base?
Yep.
You're going to see a public just on that. I think on that issue, you'd see a public Republican majority for many, many years to come.
You can.
Because people will be able to associate well-being, livelihoods, actually meaningful livelihoods, with Republican economic policy.
Isn't it bizarre that you actually look at those guys, even if it's a still picture, and you feel proud now of America, where before all you had to do is look at that little speech that Biden gave in Angola, and you're like, yeah, we needed this. Hey, we're going to take a break right now, but we will be right back with our last segment. Now's your chance to get on social media. We'll be right back.
With reputations as respected high-level prosecutors in Bexar County, the attorneys of LaHood Norton Law Group bring invaluable practical knowledge from the other side of the aisle, using over 70 years of combined experience to strategically advocate clients' rights and pursue the best possible outcome.
I'm Nico LaHood with LaHood Norton Law Group. Have you been arrested or accused of a crime? The LaHood Norton Law Group has the knowledge to defend you regardless of how small or large your case. In Bexar County, anywhere in the state, or even nationwide, we have the knowledge to defend you in federal or state court, no matter how small or large your case. We are trial lawyers with proven success.
Using their 70 years of combined experience to strategically advocate for their clients' rights and pursue the best possible outcome. The LaHood Norton Law Group. For a free consultation, call today, 210-797-7700. 210-797-7700. LaHoodNorton.com.
This is Nico LaHood. If you or a loved one has been arrested or accused of a crime, we can help.
LaHoodNorton.com.
1200 WOAI, this is Sidebar. Please get on social media, find a platform, and we will continue the show in around 15 minutes. We love your questions, your comments. And in the meantime, before we start any other topic, I wanted to talk about Pete Hegseth, because this guy's not stepping down. Gates, I don't know what happened to him, if it was his own choice to step aside, but it was pretty quick that he said, hey, I don't want to get in the way of any of this. But Pete Hegseth is now saying, President Trump backs me, I'm not going anywhere. Like, wow, what? It's pretty incredible.
Yeah, I like Pete overall. I hope he doesn't step down. Obviously, he has he's got some huge scars in his past, which a lot of people do. He's got some different huge scars than other people's huge scars, but we all have huge scars. I mean, look, he was unfaithful to all three of his wives. I get it. That's not a great quality. But for me as a Christian, I believe in redemption. I study King David. I understand Psalm 51. King David was such a horny toad that he committed murder to cover up adultery, and he was a man after God's own heart. And then you read Psalm 51 and you hear the repentance coming out and reverberating from his soul. Pete, I wish, and look, I'm going to say a statement. It's going to shock some people because I'm in love with Jesus and I live it out, but I wish he wouldn't talk about it so much. He keeps bringing up his Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Just, all right, already, just relax. I mean, you almost sound like you're trying too hard. Maybe he has, look, 7 years is a good amount of time. I believe that he could have repented within that. There's no doubt that the criminal on the cross on the left did it in 7 minutes, and whatever it was like, remember me when you enter into your kingdom. And Jesus said, truly, today with me, you'll be with me in paradise. So I believe in repentance. I believe in that. I believe in that truly. But I just wish he didn't ever. He keeps saying. I mean, I've seen a number of his interviews, and I get it. It comes across too salesman-y. Now I'm sure it's genuine. A lot of people around him say it's genuine, and I believe it can be. So I believe in that. But I wish he would tone it down a little bit. And just there's a redemption story in here, and you don't have to say your Lord and Savior Jesus Christ after every sentence. That's all.
I didn't think about that. I saw the Megyn Kelly interview with him, and I thought it was a good one. It was over an hour, and good for Megyn. She went point by point by point and made him answer that. And then she said up front, we're friends. I respect Pete. I've known Pete for a long time, but let's get to the facts here. Let's go allegation by allegation.
She's
so good for her, and I think everybody should watch that. It's interesting that you said what you just said. I didn't think of it that way, but I did get a kind of cringe feel.
Yes, and that's from
here I am, and I'm like,
yes,
and I almost felt guilty. And
that's exactly right,
because I love the Lord Jesus Christ
Quit
too. And
pushing being a Christian. So
and I said,
I
said, Lord Jesus, should I be this irritated that he's talking about you so much?
Yeah,
because I almost felt like, but I see Nico's point. I think it's a valid point. He can get there. He can get to the basis for his convictions in a different way.
Yeah, but it's almost like a tagline that he keeps saying versus saying, look, in my faith, which I did not follow, I was raised right. You can hear my mom. You know that she was unhappy with me. She was embarrassed of me. And a lot of things in that email were true at that time. Say that. You're taking it away from the other side. She was being a mom that was trying to raise me right. She did raise me right. Look, I'm not giving you an excuse. I'm just giving you a reason. When you come back from battle and you see the things I've seen, and I see it, and that's why I want to serve in this position so much. You look for outlets that are of this world, drinking, women, everything else other than my faith. Now you can say faith without saying Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, and just say it with my faith.
But in a way, go ahead.
Well, I do, and I wish you would have done it more. The idea of this is the way I used to be.
Yes.
Here's why it was wrong.
Yep.
I realized that it was wrong. A strong point, though, I will say, a huge strong point is he kept coming back to his current wife.
Yeah,
and I love that he elevated her, and I love that he said every meeting we go to together. We go to these meetings together, and here he
says the two J's. His wife's name is Jay and Jesus Christ. I mean, and you guys know I am an unapologetic follower of Christ, but you just didn't have to use that phrase. Go ahead, George. I'm sorry.
No, I felt the same way. You're just articulating what I was thinking. But he keeps coming back to his wife, and I thought that was really, it shows a clear departure.
But sometimes, in a way, I thought to myself, the reason that he did that is when you're an anchor on television that long, you really don't reveal who you are and a lot about yourself.
People didn't know that, right?
And I thought that myself because I thought it was excessive, but at the same time, they don't know that part of him. People may think, oh, I know, that's the guy I watched every weekend on Fox News. But they didn't know that part about him, and so he's emphasizing it.
I'm worried that people are going to receive it as a decoy.
I get what you're saying.
And not as a legitimate claim of faith, because he's got charges that are being levied against him. By the way, I think they're, in many cases, they're BS allegations.
In the sense that
totally
made up.
Totally
Sexual
anonymous.
assault allegations.
They remain anonymous.
Ridiculous.
This is completely unacceptable. You're smearing a man in the court of public opinion, and that's grotesquely unjust. But I like that he kept coming back to his wife. It seems obvious that there's a clear departure from the Pete Hegseth that was, in terms of his crappy judgment and his unfaithfulness to the Pete Hegseth that is. Was he unfaithful to all three
yes, he
wives?
Was.
I thought it was all three.
Well, here's why I'm asking. Because he married his current wife, Jen, in 2019, and these allegations I thought were from 2017. So I didn't think he was. I don't think he was married to her yet.
Maybe you're right.
Now Megyn did point out that he was dating her, maybe, or he was with her. So it doesn't make it any better.
Unfaithful in the sense that I don't think he was her wife. She was his wife at the time. Maybe that's what they mean.
Right. I don't think she was his wife.
But he was not. He was with her.
But they were in an exclusive relationship.
So I don't think he cheated on his third wife. Please check me out on that. I think he cheated on his first two.
But I think he cheated on her when she was his girlfriend or something.
Yes, I think that's probably right. It sounds right because Megyn said it, and he didn't deny it. No, I'm just since facts matter. I'm just trying to. I'm trying to be
what
clear.
He could have done. Think about what that 17 allegation is. I mean, it's not just that he cheated on his wife that wasn't his wife then.
Pretty bad.
I mean, the lady that he was with, he was trying to pick up another chick. And then this one was pissed off at him. I guess she wanted his attention, so was reprimanding him by the pool and yelling at him. She's his handler. She's not, who is she? But then she ends up in bed with him. And, and then, he relieved himself on her, and then he gives her a towel, allegedly, and then she gets all ticked off. Well, your husband's in the next room, and then this guy knows her husband. Yeah. Look, this is disgusting behavior. I mean, and I think he could have said, I'm embarrassed to have to talk about it. I don't recognize that guy, and it disgusts me. And I'm so humbled by my wife's support and her grace that she extended to me. And me saying my worldview at the time was not good, and it led me to do stupid things. It wasn't an accident. It was a point. But my worldview now, without saying Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, my worldview now as a Christian is something different. And I understand redemption, and I understand reconciliation, not only with God, but with my wife and with the community. And I have a track record. I have 7 years. Judge me on those 7 years. Because, and moving forward, it's such a really great opportunity to really
that said, on balance, I think it was positive. I think it worked.
It was a good interview.
I mean,
it was a good interview.
He's comfortable in front of a camera, obviously. And I think he handled himself generally well, barring these instances. I think trying a little too hard.
He loves Jesus too much.
I think Megan did a great job. I think that, and this is, at the beginning of the week, I texted you and I said, I'm about 50-50 on whether Hexeth is going to get confirmed from where we were last week. Now I'm like 90-10 he's going to get confirmed. It's looking really, really good.
There's a couple of female senators that have dug their heels in.
Joni Ernst, I think, is going to come around. It doesn't matter that Murkowski isn't. It doesn't matter.
John Cornyn still says no. What does that say about him?
Hey,
we'll see.
I want to say it here. I don't like John Cornyn. I don't like him at all.
Me neither.
I don't trust John Cornyn. I think he is a squishy, unreliable, and I don't believe the man is an actual conservative. I don't. I really don't like him, and I hope we primary his ass and get him the hell out of the Senate.
Going anywhere, dude.
Well, I just read news, and I don't know who it is. It's brand new. A few days ago, that somebody's going to. There's actually a serious effort to primary him, and so God bless that effort. But I don't think we can afford to lose 4 people.
Okay,
and I think we're in the zone. So I think it looks more and more likely. We have to take a stand on Hexeth. Gates, I understand. I wish he was confirmed, but okay. I mean, Pam Bondi's fantastic.
I like Pam.
But we can't afford to lose. We lose Hexeth, and they're going to go after Gabbard.
Oh yeah,
and it ain't going to stop there.
And
Kash Patel, and it'll never end. Yep. Enough already. Let's knock off the Kavanaugh crap and let's move on.
Yeah. Look, but speaking of not wanting to, I don't want to move on from this Tennessee bill. I mean, this is a big deal. Look, we have 4 minutes here, and we're going to talk about this on the after show. But this deal and the Supreme Court justices, what they're weighing in is a critical issue. It's really a simple issue. This is not difficult.
Very.
It might be hard for some people because the attacks and how it used to be in the culture in the past, and it's a cultish movement. But the idea that we do not, that there's a state law that bans puberty blockers for children. I mean, you're talking 8, 9, 10, 12 children, and then surgery for children based off what they feel and what they want to do is illogical. It's inconsistent, in my opinion, because of my worldview. It's immoral. I mean, and so this is not difficult at all. I mean, and I've said this on the show before, and we'll finish this at the after. I mean, we'll dissect Alito's points, but the real law, that Cass report, there's European studies that got shoved up their ass from Biden's people, which it should be. And I'm glad to hear what we're hearing, because if you can read the tea leaves, it looks like they're going to kick it back to the states. Should be a 6-3 decision, maybe a 5-4 if Roberts, chickens out at the end. Who knows? But when you think about...
Or Gorsuch.
Well, yeah, and he's in a pickle. We'll talk about that because of his previous ruling.
Yes.
But, someone can't drive until they're 16. We've talked about the inconsistencies of age of accountability. In Texas, every state's a little bit different. In Texas, you can consent as an adult to sex at 17. 17, consent to sex. You can't send pictures of it, but you can consent to it. It's an inconsistency. You have to be 18 to get a tattoo, own a rifle, to vote, or to be to commit to an enforceable agreement, a contract. You have to be 21 to own a handgun, to drink, or to smoke. You have to be 25 to be in the U.S. Congress, and you have to be 35 to be the U.S. president. You have all, but you can be 9 and 8 to change your genitals and to take drugs that can cause tumors and blood clots and heart conditions and sexual issues and mental health issues and all kinds of things. 80% of people regret this by the time they're 18. I mean, there's studies, there's hard data out there that George has talked about in the past and has been updated. So this is not complicated at all. If someone, when they're 18, if they want to decide to change their body parts, then you can, I believe in a free world, you can do that part. That's your body, you can do that. But as a child and a parent, it's my kid, because this is about parental rights too, about stopping it and also allowing it. As a parent, you can't let your 8-year-old have sex with somebody else. So there's limits. We got to be careful. We have to use a reasonable, common sense approach to things. Look for things that are logically consistent, that make sense, and advocate that going forward. So we'll talk about more of these things. I wanted to at least mention that on the radio portion of this. I know we're going to be talking about the Tennessee law, the Supreme Court. Answer questions, put your questions in. If you're on the radio, park, pull over, get on social media. What is it again, Saulo?
SidebarTV.com.
There it is, SidebarTV.com. Thanks for joining us, guys. God bless you. Have a wonderful weekend.
The preceding show was paid for by the LaHood Norton Law Group. The views and opinions expressed are those of the advertiser and do not necessarily represent those of WOAI and iHeartMedia.
Okay, continue.
Aggressive. I was warming up for the after show. I was getting my slang words ready. Since so many people since so many people are fragile and are so offended by when you use a slang word, it may not be a little rough. We're on. Okay, good. So Tennessee law. So George, let's talk about that. You have.
I know that this is so stupid, but can we start from the beginning to just talk about what they're talking about?
Okay, yeah, there's a Tennessee law that banned the use of puberty blockers and gender because I refuse to say
therapies.
Yeah, but I refuse to say gender affirming care.
Yeah.
There's nothing affirming about this bullshit.
Correct.
There's nothing affirming about it. This is truly child abuse.
Mhm.
I know that's a phrase that goes out. It's child abuse. You get an 8, 9, 10, 12-year-old, 14-year-old, 15-year-old, 9, 7-year-old, whatever, and say, I feel a certain way, cut off my breasts, if I even have any, or cut off my penis and my testicles.
Yep.
That's absolutely batshit crazy. There's no other way to say it. We've lost our minds. So the support of it is insane. It is. And I'll say that in front of anyone's face. And anyone that supports this, there's something wrong with you. There's something ideologically wrong with you if you support doing this to children. If you're 18 and above, look, here's my deal. If you can lose your life in a war to defend this country, then you can chop off whatever you want to chop off. I just believe in that. I believe in freedom. I believe in liberty in that sense. Yep. Not freedom to do anything, but freedom to do your life. And that's fine on that deal. And that's different than abortion because there's technically another life inside of you. So I can debate that with somebody too if they want to. But all that to say, that's what Tennessee law says. So the Biden administration sued them. And it's worked its way up in appeal. And that's what they're debating right now about whether you can ban it or not.
Yeah.
And look, if you read the tea leaves, like I said on the radio portion, it should be a 6-3 decision. It should be Roberts, even though he went with Gorsuch on that last deal or whatever he did on his previous ruling. He just said, look, we're 9 non-doctors up here. Shouldn't this barely be for the state? Why should we be? And then they started contemplating the ramifications. Does this apply to sports? Where are we going with this? You have to think about the ripple effect of a decision like this and where it's going to go. But Gorsuch should have started. I say Gorsuch sometimes, but because that ruling was shit when he equivocated your ethnicity.
The Bostock ruling.
Yeah, the civil rights to transgender issues. he was completely wrong about that.
And a huge departure for his judicial philosophy.
Yes.
I mean, the idea that he's reading gender, the specific terms are.
Say that to explain that case. We're jumping around.
Please,
I want to make sure
yes,
people
please.
are following us.
Well, I mean, he basically read
We get the
into
case.
1967 civil rights employment law that forbids discrimination on the basis of sex, where everybody knows what that means. And obviously the legislature knew what sex meant at the time. And he basically read into that law the terms sexual orientation and gender identity, as if somehow those individuals would even be dreaming that those things would be somehow equivalent to sex or discriminating on the basis of sex. Everybody in 1967 knew what sex meant, and that is your birth sex, which is the only sex. And so it's true, the term gender has been used to talk about your roles, having the sex that you have, male or female. What are some roles that you may take on as a result? But the idea that gender and sex are fundamentally different things, they're actually not. I mean, we use them interchangeably. What's your gender? I mean, come on. No one has a list of 57 things. You only have to go to Stupidity at Facebook to find this. So,
Right.
So
That may change.
the Gorsuch and
Right.
Bostock ruling, I think, was really unfortunate, and I think unfortunately it's gonna follow him because it has.
That's why he was so quiet.
Yeah,
He was eerily quiet. A commentator was saying, and I saw that he was quiet. Why? Because he's bit himself in the ass. Because what did he say in that ruling on the civil rights case? Now he's thinking, oh, I better.
How do I make this work?
Well,
Yeah.
just say you were wrong and correct it if it comes back up again.
yeah. No, Nico brought it up, and I think it became sort of the foundational, foundational philosophy for the whole series of arguments that followed. Roberts said, quote, "The Constitution leaves that question." In other words, judgments over scientific evidence and judgments over whether someone should transition their sex. And Roberts said up front, the Constitution leaves that question to the people's representatives rather than to 9 people, none of whom is a doctor.
Yep.
End of quote. And that it's interesting because I think everyone who asks questions, with the exception of the completely unhinged Sotomayor and
Jackson
and Brown Jackson. Although I think Kagan was okay. I mean, we expected Kagan to ask the questions that she asked, I think, just given her judicial philosophy. But I think all the conservative justices took that tenor, the idea that am I really qualified to be sort of imposing on a state, given that a law has actually been passed, went through the legislative system, and really on appeal upheld by the Sixth Circuit Court. Am I really in a position to be sort of blowing that off and imposing my will based on, at best, ambiguous science in terms of quote unquote gender transition, or as you said, gender affirming science, which is really bullshit. I mean, that's not science at all. So at best you could say it's ambiguous, but really I think the science that we do have is actually not ambiguous at all. And I think that's where Alito weighed in and did a favor to the court, because he actually went back to studies and he cited those studies. And he said, no, actually, the data seems to be pretty clear that the long-term effects of these kinds of significant changes to your sexual makeup has an unbelievable number of physiological effects, and many of which are not very positive. And so he rattled a bunch of data, and then they cited a few studies, and I think that's the problem. It's the studies that they're citing are deeply flawed because they're selective. In January of 23, in the Journal of Sex Therapy, they were blown out of the water. They actually went through these 2 studies, Nico, 2011 and 2015. There were 2 go-to studies from the trans lobby. And the problem with them, if you've done any kind of study, and if you've read peer-reviewed journals, you can clearly see that they basically choose the good, the very little that is good, and they totally blow off the bad. It's totally biased for any kind of benefit while disregarding any kind of the long-term effects. So the studies are flawed in favor. The studies are rigorous against.
Well,
and I love that Alito brought that up.
Well, there's a CAS study and there's a Swedish study that Alito was bringing up. I mean, what is it, like 80% of people want to detransition by 18? They regret it. Of course they regret it. Who doesn't regret shit you did when you were 10, 12, 15, 16? I mean, we've lost. I mean, there needs to be a true repudiation, dare I say, Saulo, rebuke of this. That's an inside joke. I mean, of this type of ideology and this behavior. I mean, this idea is ridiculous, and it's inconsistent, illogical, and that's why Justice Jackson's example and comparing it to interracial. I mean, I really tried. I was talking to Patrick in the office, and I said, "Hold on, Patrick. I mean, you're much smarter than I am. What am I missing?" He's like, "You're trying too hard to be logical. There's nothing to miss." This is Patrick. I was always wondering if she was a dumbass. Now I know for sure she's a dumbass. He said that. Her rulings have been insignificant. Her opinions. He goes, now she's a dumbass. I mean, it's just absolutely ridiculous to compare it to interracial, not allowing and I only like saying interracial, ethnic marriages to this. I couldn't find a logical, even a ridiculous logical connection. There was none.
Speaking of 1967, another case that was deliberated in and ruled on, Loving versus Virginia, where indeed, I mean, I have to read this because I thought, did Kamala Harris just become a justice without a
Read it, please.
This is the convoluted statement. Quote, this is by Ketanji Brown Jackson.
Okay, good.
Justice Jackson. Quote, being drawn by the statute that was sort of like the starting point. The question was whether it was discriminatory because it applied to both races and it wasn't necessarily invidious or whatever. But as you know, as I read, well, if you read, I don't know that you read, but okay. But as you know, as I read, the case here, the court starts off by saying that Virginia is now one of 16 states which prohibit and punish marriages on the basis of racial classifications. And that's how she ended the statement. And when you look at the structure of that law, it looks in terms of you can't do something that is inconsistent with your own characteristics. It's sort of the same thing. No, Justice Jackson, it's actually not at all the same thing. First of all, it was clearly discriminatory in 1967, where you had a provision that prohibited in the law a white person marrying a black person. Those are immutable traits. You can't change that.
That's right.
Whereas, and I find this incredibly inconsistent. They want to have it both ways. The whole notion of gender, quote unquote, gender theory is gender fluidity. The idea that you can feel like another sex and that you have the right to feel that way and to basically actualize whatever it is that you feel.
Well, you can.
So you can't have it both ways.
You can't force me to feel the way you feel. That's my issue.
But that's the implications. Right. I'm just talking about, she said the structure of the law is the same. It's actually not. One is immutable. The other one is clearly not. And it's the people whose philosophy you seem to align with that in the same breath argue that gender is actually fluid. So if it's immutable, which means it can't change, it can at the same time be fluid. Which is it? And this is the person who is arguing these are immutable. This is the same thing. Is the same classes. Well, weren't you the one who actually at your confirmation hearing said that you didn't know what a woman was? Right. That you're not a biologist? So which is it? She's basically inconsistent out of the gate, and of course you can't really challenge justices like that. I think it would be imprudent. But you can see the contortion of the logic. And in Sotomayor, forget about it. She's basically saying, look, I mean, there are risks to every procedure. I mean, there's risks when you take aspirin, she said. As if cutting off your balls is apparently
the same.
To be equitable with taking an aspirin. And
was that part of the... So
I honestly, I think Matthew Rice, he's 35 years old. I mean, the guy's impressive. I think he's a young guy, the Solicitor General for Tennessee. I mean, the guy was really, really good. I mean, I thought he was pretty sound.
Yeah. Alamo Talk says, I will say that Democrats still focusing on all their time on transgender rights will lose every time.
And Alamo Talk, brother, you're still right. And a lot of other Democrats are agreeing with you. And this is why we're talking about Democrats have to redefine themselves. It's a very interesting circumstance they're in. And conservatives and Republicans have an opportunity.
They need a reboot button.
Well, I mean, I don't want them to if they're going to go with this progressive leftist communist type flow. But if you're talking about a Harold Ford Democrat, if you're talking about a former Bobby Kennedy Democrat, that's when you have a system that works. Because you have this toiling, this holding each other accountable, and hey, wait a minute, but yet there's a bedrock of agreement on certain things like gender, like a border. I mean, I'm going to continue to come back, and more people are saying it. 1995, Clinton on the border, what he said about illegal aliens and all that stuff.
And Hillary.
They all said it. Schumer said it.
State of the Union, January 22nd,
Yeah,
1995.
I mean, Schumer said it. Feinstein said it. Reid said it. I mean, they all said it. This was not, Biden said it. This is not, Biden even had an opinion about marriage at one point in 2008.
Exactly.
I mean, forget about just gender. And now that he really changed his mind at his age, no, it's because he's a chameleon. He's a survivalist. And he saw that where the party was going. And I saw where it was going when I was in politics here locally. And I've shared that story many, many times over. And so this is why back, Alamo Talk and everybody else, why George and I and this show, but also just in general, took such a stand against this whole bathroom shit.
Mm-hmm.
It was never about the bathroom. It wasn't about the 2 minutes, or if you're in there longer than that, then you probably ate something bad.
You should have gone home.
Yeah, you should have gone home because you're jacking us all up. But I mean, it's not about the trip to the bathroom. It's about the ideology that undergirded it. I mean, it wasn't because it's just the bathroom. What's the big deal? Well, if it's no big deal, then go to the bathroom that you have hanging between your legs, or lack of thereof. The argument could have been pushed back the other way, but it was something deeper. And now we're seeing the seed that was planted years ago.
Yeah.
Look, these leftists play long ball. They plant seeds. They know that they play off emotion, and they have a goal in mind, and they're going to work towards it.
And why is it 1 in every 3 or 4 Hollywood stars has a transgender kid, and they're so proud to talk about it? It's like, what?
Because they're proud to talk about it.
I know, but it's the parents. It's not about the kid. It's all about them.
Look, if this was such a real issue, then we should have people that from decades ago, and they're going to say because they were embarrassed to talk about it. No, because it wasn't there. I mean, look, Bill Maher hits a home run when he talks about the data, the studies. Because by 2050, we're all going to be gay and we're all going to be transgender, whatever that he does his little skit. But he was true. He was being honest. And look, Bill, when he's on, he's on. And he was right about this. And he goes, look, this is ridiculous. Maybe we are self-creating our own problem. And he's right. And the data bears that out, by the way. Look, Proverbs 22:6 says, start a child up, raise a child up in the way they will go, and when they get older, they won't depart from it. Now, you can do that to the antithesis of a biblical worldview too. You can do the same thing children aren't born hating. If you present hate to them, then yes, they're going to be racist and they're going to start hating. A child is impressionable. You can teach children anything. That's why it's about stewardship, and it's so important to nurture and raise a child properly. For boys to be boys, girls to be girls, and understand this beautiful union at some point between man and woman that creates something called life. That's the prescription God designed, and he's the designer of everything. That's the biblical worldview. That's my worldview. Now, someone else that doesn't have that worldview has a challenge. They have to contend with how they explain consciousness, design, fine-tuning, and all the stuff that we can talk about and debate. But
a 3-year-old or a 4-year-old saying, I feel like a girl, or a 7-year-old saying that it's the parents that's pushing it. It's not the kid saying, I want to take medicine. I want to have surgery. I want to.
That's right. I'm just stunned and grieved, frankly, by the lack of curiosity when you consider what's at stake. The idea they're just making sort of these blanket statements, what Alito called categorical statements. About this medical intervention, when there's clear concerns, there's obvious concerns, and this idea when Sotomayor was arguing, she already believes what she believes. She already believes that if in fact these minors are denied so-called gender affirming care or gender transitions, she believes that if that happens, then their tendency to suicide increases dramatically. She thinks that the possibility of suicidal ideation increases dramatically, that they're going to commit suicide. She enters that as a given. It's an axiom for her. She doesn't even allow that there's serious questions about that. And there's a significant body of evidence against that. But that's where she's coming from. And I think, unfortunately, this is shared by a lot of people on the left. And the idea that you think you'd step back when you consider what's at stake. Because in fact, and the data does show, and we've talked about it in here many times, and we've talked about it on R-Rated Christianity, the data overwhelmingly shows that kids will grow out of that confusion as they get into adolescence. They will grow out of that. That seems to me, with some therapy, infinitely more preferable than altering their bodies permanently.
We're at the age, and at times we know. I mean, when I was growing up, you know what a phrase I'm not hearing anymore? A tomboy. A tomboy today is a transgender. No bullshit. It's a girl that maybe has brothers or what. It's just I know many people and many girls that I knew at the time that were quote unquote tomboyish, and they're very feminine, heterosexual, wonderful, beautiful women with a family.
I know.
I mean, big deal. You're a tomboy. I mean, what does that mean? But now a tomboy, you don't hear that phrase anymore because now a tomboy is a transgender trapped inside. And every tomboy that I know grew out of it. And everyone that now some I get it, maybe didn't. I want to look at their family life. I want to look at their relationship with their dad. All that stuff that we know that people debate and talk about as well. But we've lost our minds just to think, and that's why I wanted to bring up those other numbers and those.
Ruthie said,
before.
"Save the tomboys," and Patty said these kids should be able to sue their parents once they grow up and want to detransition.
You know, it's hard. It pains me for them. It really does. This is an issue that we need to not give any ground on. And now that people's eyes are open, I hope they go into any of these debates with their eyes wide open. And now we have a culture now, and it seems like people are seeing the truth behind this deceptive push and the harm that it has caused so many, not just children, but families, which is why Elon Musk is a militant, anti-progressive.
Yep.
He's I've labeled him that. I've never heard that. Yeah. But he's an why? And
pissed.
But brother, it didn't get any more personal than your kids. I remember saying, I don't know if it was to George, because George and I talk about so many things offline too, but it was to somebody I was saying, what's the deal with this dude? This guy's the richest guy in the world. Matter of fact, if he goes along to get along with these insane people that he seems to support, because he seemed to support them, he was on their side. We don't have an Elon Musk. Well, you did, asshole. Yeah. You had Elon Musk. We don't have a Joe Rogan. You did. He was a Bernie bro for how long? And so why is this guy so militant, and he's prepared to lose so much financially? Why does he want to do this? And then I heard that interview with Jordan Peterson about his son.
And I think he acknowledges that this is really insane. This is insane because it's.
But he bought into it. Is my point.
Indeed,
he believed the lies.
Yeah. You're buying into an insanity that then hurts your kids.
Yeah,
and it hurts them irreparably. One of the solicitors before the court in support of banning the law is Chase Strongio. He fascinates me. He's an ACLU trans lawyer, and he's arguing before the court.
He wants to ban the law. Oh, ban the law. Got it.
Yeah, and so he's arguing before the court, and he's going at it with Thomas. And Thomas asked him a simple question: explain to me again why this is an issue of the 14th Amendment, why this is about equal protection, why there's discrimination on the basis of sex. And listen to this. Here's his explanation. Quote, a birth sex male who hits puberty too early can receive puberty blockers in order to later develop like other boys. That's true. Then he says this. A quote, birth sex female may also want to receive puberty blockers in order to undergo puberty as a typical boy.
What?
Yeah. So it's the same purpose, he says.
I was trying to figure that one out.
He says it's the same purpose. And what makes the treatment prohibited for the latter person is sex, except one's a boy and the other one's not a boy. And see, this is
God, that's
this is an insanity.
Man. That's crazy.
They skip right over the fact, the objective fact that this is not a boy. A birth sex boy, think about it, a birth sex male hits puberty too early, can receive puberty blockers in order to slow it down and develop at a more paced level like other boys. Fair enough, but that's a boy. He's not changing his sex. He says, then he uses the analogy, which is flawed, a birth sex female, well she may also want to receive puberty blockers in order to undergo puberty as a typical boy, but she's not a typical boy. She's a she. You just said she's a birth sex female. So it's not the same thing. One is for a normal treatment to slow down puberty in a boy. You're not changing his sex. The other one is to alter one's sex and prepare them for gender surgery. How the hell is that the same? One's a boy, stays a boy. One's a girl.
But if a lie goes uncorrected long enough, it becomes the truth. I mean, I would have said, Judge, exhibit number 1, and I would have proven up Kindergarten Cop, where the kid goes up to Arnold Schwarzenegger and says, boys have penises, girls have vaginas. Yeah, that's it. That's the bottom line.
That's all.
Period. End of story. And back then, that was on the movie. Can you imagine that today? No one wants to talk about that today.
Nope.
But it's true. And it's that simple. It's really that simple. It's simple, simple, simple. Whether somebody makes it not easy is on them. And it just shows a lot about that person.
I thought it was utterly disqualifying that you could sit there and make a statement so objectively absurd. I mean, and everybody's just kind of like.
From the solicitor?
Oh, okay. Yeah. I mean, wait a minute.
It's a cult. I mean, because you look when
this is religious in nature.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's a religious cult. It's insane.
So what will happen? I think
they're going to take it back. I think they're going to kick it back to the states. I mean, that seems like the most logical explanation. You saw some of that. They do not have the majority of the court, and I think
the law is going to be upheld, and it'll be a gift to the country. Thank goodness, because this will be talk about a slippery slope.
There's 24 states, about 24 or 25 states that have the same thing, which they should. That should be all 50.
Yes,
we should have all 50.
This is a dumb question, but what were puberty blockers created for in the first place? I mean,
well, I think that's a legitimate example. What he said, a birth sex male, a boy is accelerated. There are physiological.
So they stop him from developing, and that's like a major thing. It happens, or it doesn't happen that much. Why would it happen?
Well, I mean, it's infrequent as a condition goes, but it's not non-existent, certainly. And so he was trying to say that, hey, this is now a normal course of treatment. It's true. It is. There are girls, there are boys and girls who are accelerating towards puberty. That could be a very embarrassing thing.
Okay.
And so you can take that at an appropriate dosage and slow it down. But you're not changing your sex.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're not getting prepped to become some other sex. Right? It's not part of some regimen to ultimately alter your sex through surgery. And he's trying to say, it's the same purpose. And he's like, actually, no, it's not the same purpose. One, you're trying to alter the sex. And in the other one, you're trying to
stop your third grader from having a beard.
Exactly. Yeah. So bottom line is, we're not discriminating on the basis of sex. We are discriminating on the basis of medical considerations. And it seems to me we should be discriminating on the basis of medical considerations because of the outcome of those medical considerations.
A kid can't drink. You want them to chop off shit, and then you want them to take these drugs? They're drugs.
The law discriminates all the time. We just can't discriminate on the basis of immutable traits. I don't even like. I can't stand it, to be honest with you. I don't even like the whole protected category shit. It drives me insane. Because that opened a door that has not been closed. It's gotten real wide. Yeah. And now there's been a race to become a protected category. So you can run roughshod, and pretty soon your Constitution is worthless. Because the idea of being equal before a creator, that's getting erased protected category by protected category. And talk about codifying tribalism.
Let me tell you what happened this week. A client came to us, and we have a civil lawyer in our firm now. Brian, he's a phenomenal civil lawyer, and he's of counsel with us. And so excited to work with him. We had a client come that they own a apartment complex, and there's someone that wants a cat, and because they had it's an emotional crutch, and they got some certification. The Fair Housing Act says if someone has, I mean, it's a and I didn't know about the Fair Housing Act. Brian did, our civil lawyer, and he's got his own. He works with us, and it was eye opening about this protected category class, and you can't charge a deposit to someone that has. I mean, and then they came in knowing that there was no dogs allowed, and now they have this certificate and all this other BS. I mean, it's insane that this does not protect the property owner's rights at all. The Fair Housing Act. So this whole protected, we got to be very careful, because something that has maybe good intentions, it can get out of whack because we lost the nature, we lost the goal or the focus on why this thing was trying to be implemented in the first place.
Brother, I'm telling you, this underlies, I think, a destructive philosophy we got to get away from. I'm not sure how we're going to do that very easily, but Alamatalk asked an interesting question, and it got me thinking. This is, I think, in a sense, a kind of death knell to the Democrats. And if they keep trying to ride this horse, they're going to be riding it into a brick wall. But Alamatalk, I think, asked an important question. Why exactly are they doing this? Why are they continuing to ride this horse? Outside the United States Supreme Court, when the case was being deliberated, you guys have heard of Annette Bening.
Mm-hmm. I heard her talking
just
recently.
Actress? Yes.
Warren Beatty's wife.
So she's out there. And I think this gets to...
What's she saying?
She has a transgender
quote,
kid.
Yes, quote. She says, I think the greatest gift of my life is to have kids. And to have a transgender child has made me so much more interesting. I remember when career achievements actually mattered as an actor. Now it's about, how can I get the most attention?
Social currency.
Yeah, that's what it is.
But this is the point. It's riding these left-wing bullshit, fake problem causes to give yourself meaning, you don't care if you dismantle society in the process, if you totally overturn traditional norms, at the end of the day, it's about you and you feeling good about doing stuff. That is the same spirit behind the climate alarmism, which is a cult. You can see it behind virtually every left-wing cause.
Simple Logic says, is the transgender movement yet another Marxist attempt to destroy the nuclear family related to radical feminism? And it says it's a protected class like animal farm, more equal.
It is. It's something that it's a Marxist exploited sickness. But narcissism is really at the root of this. They're exploiting the narcissism in the culture. It's all about me. It makes me so much more interesting, she says. The fact that I have a transgender child makes me more interesting.
Yeah. Yep. Use that for me.
And I think that says a lot. And it's about me. It's about how I feel. And if I wake up bored and that's not acceptable, there's got to be some sort of entertainment.
Yeah.
So this is why Salo, and I know you and I have talked about this media fixation now with social media, where everything you think and every prevarication you have and every tendency and every interest and every boredom and every psychosis and every neurosis has to be shared on social media. Like it's worth even listening to. And I think that's a sickness in the culture. What the hell ever happened to discretion, Nico?
Right.
I mean, seriously, discretion's kind of a good thing. Proverbs 27. I mean, I don't know, seems like a godly trait. I think that this gets at the heart of the problem. And so this trans mania, you end up hurting children and adults. And in the end, what you've accomplished is what? What exactly is the cause? It's insane. But I don't think it's the only one. I think it belies a deep cultural problem. And it should bring us back to faith, shouldn't it? It should bring us back to the things
traditional
that really
values that I think most people share. I mean, traditional values. When you think of people who say, conservative, I'm on a board for Bienvenido. It's Hispanics to get involved. It's very conservative, Republican, but and faith-based as well. And people are they're so afraid of the word conservative for a long time. I don't want to say I'm a conservative. I don't use that word. Why? Just conservative just means to hold something together. If your doctor takes a conservative approach to your healthcare, then they're going to not chop you up and they're going to hold you together. And they don't want to, we don't really need to do surgery on your shoulder. We can do this, do physical therapy, do this, rest, do some stretches or whatever. Maybe take this stem cell shot or whatever. That's conservative. They're holding your body together. So if we say you're conservative, what are we holding together? Well, you're holding the nucleus of a society, which is the traditional family. That's the nucleus of society. It is. And then what you're also trying to hold together is the pursuit of life, liberty, and happiness. Now, not happiness based off feelings. We've talked about this before. Happiness meant something to our founding fathers. It meant property ownership. It meant free, able to express your thoughts, free speech, worship how you want to worship, because the king at the time was Anglican, and they didn't want to get away from Christianity. They just want to get away from the Anglican, denomination of Christianity, which is something that people don't like to talk about. But this was a Christian nation, and it was not even questioned. And there's a lot of evidence to back that up, by the way. But I understand that it's been allocated to other worldviews as well. But that's what we're trying to preserve and hold together and conserve. And that was what made America truly great. And yes, there was some black eyes. Yes, that they abused it. Yes, there was some bullshit we had to deal with. It was messy. It was all of that stuff. Yes, because not all the 13 colonies wanted freedom for slaves, but they needed to come together so they can go against the king. And there's no way they could have done it together. They almost didn't get together. And Benjamin Franklin said, "Hey, we got to pray." So they prayed. They fasted. I mean, Adams talks about it. There's letters that talk about it. I mean, it's really fascinating when you study how many ways that this country could have gone off the rails and was headed in many ways. And I'm so intrigued by that era and the true leaders and what they sacrificed. And you think of, when you think of saving this country, look, whether you like it or not, I think there's an objective argument that you put, not exactly, but that Trump is at least in that universe, galaxy of arguments of what he had to put up with in the lawfare. And that's real. I know that's a phrase, a tagline or whatever, soundbite. But when you use the law as a weapon, that's what they call it. Instead of warfare, they say lawfare. Yes. So and it's true. You're weaponizing. And the same thing the Democrats were worried about Trump's going to do, they did. The irony of the left is if they're bitching about something, they've probably done it or they want to do it. And so you think about what we're trying to preserve and what this country means and what the Constitution means and what the ideas were. The ideas of these inalienable, immutable rights of life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, of freedom that are endowed, cloaked over us by a creator, not by government, by something outside of time, space, and matter. The government was constructed around that idea. Now, whether you call it Yahweh of the Bible, the Christian Bible, Hare Krishna, whatever you want to say it's something else, some mythical god, Krampus, whatever you want to say. Yes, I was for you. You want to say, so whatever you want to say. But there's some, we know it was the God of the Bible, but there's something outside of the inalienable rights endowed on us. That was the culture of this country. It was the culture. If you look at the constitutions of these 13 colonies in the original states, I challenge people to read them. You're going to be, if you're not a Christian, if you're agnostic or atheist, welcome. But you're going to be disappointed because they bought into the idea that, hey, Jack, I'm not the architect of this shit, and I'm not the one that designed life, and there's these rights, these freedoms I have of free speech, of self-defense, of prosperity, of growth, of exploring, that was given to me by something, and it wasn't you, and it was endowed by a creator. I mean, we have to get back to that.
Yeah.
Now, in that, there's freedom to worship and think the way you want to. Our founding fathers did not have that. They were not contemplating the freedom of getting away from Christianity, whether you like it or not. Now, you didn't have to be evangelized and you didn't have to be a Christ follower, but the ideas of Christianity, they wanted that for this country. We've gotten so far away from that. And that's an objective truth, George, right? This is not something that's not our opinions. These are objective facts. But so, and part of that is a traditional family. It's a mommy and a dad. Now, it doesn't mean that if you're in a divorced family or a single, no, of course you can raise good children, great children, and things can be wonderful. And there's just a slew of examples of that. But you cannot argue with the fact that the data bears this out from criminal data, recidivism data, prison incarceration data, everything. That when you have a loving mommy and daddy to raise a child, to do what the other can't do, and to have this wonderful complementary relationship the way God designed it, that is the best opportunity. Now, it doesn't mean that people don't go off the rails. I get that. For a child to thrive, that's it. That's just a prescription. Doesn't mean it has to be that way and that you can't be successful other ways. So we got to get back to these type of conversations. And you're not goofy to think that way, to think that you want your mommy and daddy in the same house. Again, I understand divorce rates are high, and they're high in the Christian world too. So, Christians, don't get on your high horse. But all I'm saying is that there's something to this. And it's because these are ideas endowed to us by our creator. And our founding fathers believe that. This country was predicated on that. And I hope to live my life that way.
Yeah. And the ratification of the Constitution enshrines those principles as well. You could see our founding fathers practicing them. I always go back to that story. Does the name Elizabeth Willing Powell ring a bell? She's the Philadelphia socialite that approached Benjamin Franklin while they were ratifying the Constitution. And she goes, "So, doctor, what have you left us? A monarchy? Or is it going to be a monarchy, or is it going to be a republic?" And he says, "Well, a republic if you can keep it."
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And so,
Who said that again?
Benjamin Franklin.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
And so you got to think about, why was he saying that? I mean, you had 13 colonies, but they were pretty fractious. I mean, the United States was much more homogenous then than it is today, but you had some significant differences. You had states that were dramatically different. And so before them was the idea of, how do you get these people to get along, on the big things? You have this small liberty-minded state in New Hampshire, and you have this large slave-owning state in Virginia. How are we going to make this work exactly? And so it was an experiment in self-rule. Are we going to be able to do this? Are we going to be able to find enough common ground? I think the answer ultimately was yes. What are those things around which we can have common commitments to as a people, even though there are significant differences maybe in our demographics, maybe in our priorities. At some level, at a core level, there's got to be some common ground on the big things. We have to agree on the big things. And that's why it was an experiment. Are we going to be able to be committed to that idea that we can agree to disagree, but let's not just disagree, because we can't have a bicameral system of a House and a Senate that permanently disagree about everything all the time. Stuff's got to get done. We have to serve the interest of the people. So there has to be a system, a framework for negotiating intense differences. And this is what America has shown.
Yeah.
And up until recently, our institutions have operated in good faith to support that. But we've seen a corruption of our institutions now. That's the problem, where it's not about supporting the well-being and advancing the well-being of the citizen, irrespective of the political views of that citizen. Now it's about, divvying out benefits depending on your political view, because so corrupted have our institutions become because of this change in priorities now. It's not about equal justice under the law anymore. So we got to get back to that. And I think for the first time in a long time, Karen, I got to say, I'm hopeful. I am. I'm hopeful about the conversations about Department of Education. I'm hopeful about getting back and teaching American history, about teaching the priorities of our founding fathers, about actually teaching the Bible as literature in high school classrooms and elementary school. Why not? I think that if we can get back to the things that were working before, we have a shot. We do.
Well, I know you're getting close to wrapping up, but I thought it was going to come up, this whole Krampus thing, Sal. I thought you would bring it up more. I know it was a deal, this parade from this mythical character that wanted to scare the shit out of kids to be good, and
I don't know what's more scary, Krampus or Elf on a Shelf.
Oh my goodness, Krampus.
I don't know.
For sure.
They are supposed to do the same thing,
No,
though.
the
Scare kids into
Elf on the Shelf?
behaving. Yeah, that's what it's all
Wow,
about.
it doesn't work that way with our kids.
Oh, okay. Elf
You
on
have
a
Elf on a
Shelf.
Shelf?
Yeah.
You do that?
Yeah.
That's supposed
Is
to
that the
tell
ones where
people.
every morning they're in a different place?
Yeah, somebody's watching.
Oh, wow.
Oh,
So
no,
you better be
we made it.
good.
You put it in the same place?
No. We do. Davi's real
Yeah.
creative.
Oh.
I mean, and the kids look forward to it, and there's always a good message with it, and we always tie it in.
Elf on a
God.
Shelf is the cute Krampus.
I didn't know that was his original.
Yeah, it's about
intent.
making kids
but-
behave. That's
Oh,
what it's
you
supposed to
should-
be.
Well, that's a non.
So you're participating, Nico, in this thing.
No.
Oh my goodness!
Oh
I'm
my
gonna send
God.
some
George?
pastors to your house.
Forgive me, baby Jesus.
George, you know all about the
Sorry.
Germans. Come on.
Yeah.
Well, look, I've been
We've been
texting
talking
about
about
this
2
for the
days.
last 2 or 3 days,
Yeah.
and so I think I've probably said enough. I'll let Nico take it.
Well, no, George, what you said. Look, we can talk about this because
That's what I thought Krampus
There's
was.
people in the church community that are really upset about this. And look, I think to George's point in our private text, and I won't go through all of them because
It was long.
yeah, it was long, and Salo, we got into it here. This is a culmination of lack of participation in the vote. I mean, and the non-believers are like, what the hell do you guys care? You guys push your Jesus on us. Well, but Jesus and Krampus. I mean, even if you forget about the salvation and the eternal aspects of all this, of the Christian ideology, I mean, what's the benefit of Krampus? To scare the piss out of you so you can behave? Not because you want to behave, because you don't want to dishonor or disappoint your parents or something greater than us, like a God, like our founding fathers believed in, is an inalienable rights given to us by our Creator. Okay, I mean, I don't know where you're going to land on that one, but this is an Amityville horror. I mean, if you look at the parade, it was pretty crazy. I mean, from what I saw pictures of it, I mean, it looked demonic. I understand it's not demonic in nature; it's pagan in nature.
Yeah.
But it's slipped into some pretty apparent demonic deals. And I think the criticism, I guess, from George and I is, instead of trying to rebuke this, why don't you vote this out? Because this is the city council that we have, and this is the mayor that we have, and there's no one to blame but the 92% of people that didn't vote, because only 9 to 12% of people voted for city council and mayor. Listen, let that sink in. 9 to 12% of all registered voters in San Antonio, because Bexar County can't vote for San Antonio elected officials, voted. So I think George's offline complaints to our group was, don't bitch about it and don't try to pray it away. Vote it away. Now pray, of course. I mean, we're Christians, so you pray for courage. How about that? Pray for courage. Pray for wisdom on how to get involved. Pray for these things. But you're not gonna. I mean, I think that I'm putting myself in the position of the non-believer. Like, you're gonna what? You're gonna rebuke Krampus? Well, excuse my language, is what they say, fuck you and your Christian stuff. That's what they say. I've heard it. I've been in the debates.
I had
I've been in
no
the
idea
trenches
that was some
Oh yeah.
satanic thing. I thought it
Well,
was
it's not
just to
satanic.
scare
It's not
kids.
satanic. Let's be fair.
Yeah.
It's pagan. It's pagan. It's
Yeah.
not, so it's not satanic. I want to be fair. I don't want to false accusation here. But I guess the point is, look, I'm for me, I'll take anything, almost anything that'll wake the believer up, the Christian up. But don't just pray. And I'm sure David prayed before he faced Goliath. This is the same David that committed adultery and murder to cover that up. Okay, so life is messy. People are complicated. I'm sure David prayed before he stepped before Goliath that he couldn't even put on armor because he was so small. But then he did something. He got 4 rocks or 5 rocks, and he threw a slingshot. And then he did something further. He got Goliath's sword and chopped off his head. Then he took the head and said, "Is this the guy I'm supposed to be afraid of?" Then nobody wants to teach that
Right.
part, you know.
Right.
And so it's a little pompous David there.
Nico, are you recommending violence with what you're saying?
You know better.
I'm joking.
No.
I'm joking.
I am recommending people to be dangerous. Dangerous with their courage, dangerous with their advocacy, dangerous with their involvement.
Do something.
Do something, but something within the confines. I mean, isn't it crazy that you have to? That you jokingly but say that, but you have to qualify all that stuff.
Yeah.
Because people are insane. But no, I'm saying get involved. I think that was George's advocacy. That was my advocacy. Look, of course we want people to pray. We want people to get involved. I want more churches involved. But then those churches should also encourage their congregants to vote and then teach them to vote biblically. The Islamic person is doing the same thing.
Yeah.
The Hindu is doing the same thing. The Buddhist, the atheist sure is. The progressive, the agnostic, everybody's doing that. But the Christian can't. Why? Because they've been beat over the head. That keep your politics out of it. And George and I have done long teachings and talks about the root word of politics versus partisanship. And we as Christians, the Christian movement is inherently, Karen, a political movement.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at the root word of politique, a set of ideas advocated by a polity, a group of people to affect the lives of others. A set of ideas advocated by a group of people to affect the lives of others. That's Matthew 28:19. Go into all nations, making disciples of all men, teaching them to obey all that I've commanded, baptizing in the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit. So, I mean, that's political. It's not partisan. It's political. Now, of course, today there's 2 groups we have to decide from, and one of them supports a biblical worldview, another one tells us to piss off. Okay, then you have to make your choice, and you gotta toil that with the Lord if you're a Christian. But all that to say is, to George's point, that we should. This is one of the many symptoms of not getting involved in voting. And there's many others in the county level. There's many on the state level. There's many, and especially in an urban community like San Antonio, the churches need to be more involved. And if we look at 32 million with an M, was it M, right? Million Christians in the country that are people that identify as Christian, that will not vote. And that's sad. Why? Get involved. Educate yourself. Vote the way you want to. You're the one that has to answer for your decisions and your stewardship with it. But educate yourself and get your ass out there and vote. Don't bitch about it later.
Well said. I think that was my basic contention. It is, if you really want to change hearts and minds and you really want to change the culture, then showing up at a counter protest for Krampus is probably not the most effective thing to do. And so my criticisms were that it wasn't my intent. I certainly am no one to trivialize the demonic. The scripture is very clear that there are demonic entities, there are principalities and powers, that there is, the spirit world is very real, and I don't want to trivialize that, and I don't want to diminish that. But at the end of the day, what I said was I don't recall these same quote unquote Jesus people boycotting Halloween.
I know I think of it as the same thing.
And so
yeah.
I think pulling up my text that I shared with Nico, I said hyperventilating about this is only going to pull air into a nothing burger balloon that would have come and gone on its own. If Christians really want to change the way people think, they need to, 1, stop being ignoramuses about their own beliefs. 2, get less defensive about stupid shit. And 3, get more persuasive about shit that really matters. And so the time to get persuasive, because we're blessed with a constitutional republic and an elective system of representatives to hold our elites accountable, the time to get involved is, and the mechanism for getting involved is that. And it's legal, and it's available, and it's free. And so I ask simple questions. When you had Mayor Nirenberg sit there with Nelson Wolf, presumed to come before people and hold press conferences during the COVID-19 era to tell people that they should stay in and not worship because of this boogeyman virus that was going to wipe everybody out. Okay, I don't remember there being a concerted pushback. Where's the counter protest? That would have been actually a very good protest. How about show up there?
Yeah, that was
If you really believe what you believe, why not show up for that? Nobody. Crickets. I remember when the Chick-fil-A issue came up and they wanted a spot at the airport and it became a huge stink and there was pushback from the city. I don't remember a concerted effort from the Christian church
you're right.
showing up to push back. Why not? So, but now we have a Krampus parade and everybody's coming out, to protest. And you should see some of the stuff that people grabbing megaphones and saying stupid shit out there. That's not going to change hearts and minds. And then you're going to rebuke Krampus or rebuke evil spirits. And that's not biblically sound. Nico and I often ask people rhetorically, show me one example in the scripture. And if you're listening and you're in the habit of rebuking the devil, just food for thought. One example, in the scripture, Old or New Testament, where you are admonished or encouraged or otherwise instructed to rebuke the devil. Where? What are we told as it pertains to the devil? We are to resist the devil and draw nigh to God.
Close to God.
And how do we demolish strongholds? How do we demolish demonic strongholds, which are demonic mindsets? We demolish demonic strongholds with arguments, because ultimately they're false arguments we bought into.
That's right.
And so how do you demolish a shitty argument? With a really great argument. And who gives us the great arguments?
2 Corinthians, right?
2 Corinthians chapter 10, verses 3 through 5. This is what the scripture says. Arm yourself with what? The sword of the Spirit, which is the word of God. And see, that takes work. It takes discipline. It takes time. But we live in the age of instant gratification. Why do any of that?
Well,
All I have
George,
to do is rebuke the devil.
You just crapped on people's sacred cow there.
He crapped on Krampus.
You crapped on Krampus.
He rebuked the rebukers.
That's right. Look, Emma, George and I just try to teach when you listen to R-rated Christianity, it's just to be biblically authentic and accurate. That's all. And what George is saying is there's a rebuke used in 2 Timothy 4 that Paul is encouraging in season and out of season, correct, encourage, and rebuke people with careful instruction and great patience. So rebuke, George's definition he uses, I think it's very appropriate, means to reprimand. And so there's nothing in Scripture that tells us
used in the New Testament.
Right. There's nothing. Thank you. Yes.
And actually, in that passage,
but you don't reprimand the devil. You resist the devil, and that's why James says in James 4 to resist, and he will flee, because he can't move you. You resist and you draw near to. The closer you draw near to our King, the devil don't want to get close to his ass, and he's like, no, I'm not getting over there. And so you resist and you draw near. You resist, and that's that. And of course you pray. Now, we rebuke each other. If you can rebuke me, Karen, because you're reprimanding me on something, but not you don't rebuke demons and you don't rebuke biblically. Right. And I understand how it's used. I get it. And I can see how it can get confusing. But George, we just like to be accurate. That's all. Because it sounds different to people. I'm really thinking of my audience, the non-believers, saying, you're going to what me? Well, I'll rebuke you too, man. If rebuke you is your definition of F you, well, F you, that's my rebuke. I mean, I've heard it all. I've been in the debates in colleges and everywhere else. And so I just have a different approach. And it's one to be, I want to have fidelity to God's word. I want to be loyal to God's word. And I know a lot of people are try to, but are just, and I used to rebuke. I used to say that too in my prayers. I rebuke you. And so that's all. I mean, that's all. That's how this all came up.
We had a nice discussion. The two go hand in hand really nicely, though. Resisting the devil and drawing nigh to God.
Yeah, they do.
How are you going to resist the devil? Well, if I draw nigh to God, I'll find out.
Yeah.
And how do you draw nigh to God? Well, how about reading his word? Because that tells me about his character, his priorities, his mindset, his nature. How about doing that? But see, that's not instant. That might actually take 10 minutes.
Yeah. So that was it. So there's your talk on Krampus.
I need to know more about Krampus now.
Well, it's a weird
I
deal.
thought it
There's
was
actually
just
a couple movies out.
They're trying to replace Christmas with it. I mean,
I thought it was just. Honestly, I thought it was just to scare kids into behaving. Honestly,
but it's not. That's not the idea of the idea of God so loved the world that He gave, and the part of giving is the birth of Christ.
Yeah,
that's the gift. Now, it's just spoiler alert. Jesus was not born on December 25th.
Right.
Okay? We talk about the winter solstice, and we'll talk about it as we get closer. And it was a pagan ritual, and Christians commandeered it, baptized it, all that, and took it over. They're trying to relate. And so, but okay, great. We can acknowledge all that and still because I know there's some Christian friends of mine that love the Lord, and they don't celebrate Christmas. And I was like, okay, well, Christ's birth is not mandated. Got it. Check. Okay, biblically accurate. There's nothing wrong with celebrating the birth of our Savior. And yes, if we commandeered a pagan holiday, what's wrong with that? We're supposed to take ground, go into all nations, making disciples, take dominion over things, And so why wouldn't you want to take over a holiday that was not Christian and make it into a biblical holiday?
Yeah, rebuke it in Jesus' name.
Oh, right.
Okay. Well, let's wrap up. Anything else? Any questions, Sal? Any comments we got to address? Anybody? I will talk. Thanks for being here. God bless you guys. Thanks for joining in. Hope this was beneficial to you. Share this with someone you think may benefit.
Oh, wait.
Also.
Next week, we will not be here because
Why?
it's the Elf Louise telethon.
Well,
We might do the online,
we'll go on,
9 o'clock in the studio, but it'll
So we'll be
online
on-
only.
So share people that listen to on the radio. We should have
Yes.
said that during the
Yes.
radio.
I
But on the
know. I
radio,
forgot.
it'll go Karen.
I know.
But okay, so
Krampus.
Krampus jacked you.
You got a Krampus in your
cramped
brain.
you tight. That's it.
I just rebuke all that shit.
Yeah. So next week will be 9 o'clock. Facebook Live will be in the studio at the house studio.
Yeah.
And we'll go for as long as an hour and a half or whatever, and just
Yeah.
not do the radio portion. So
Correct.
thanks, guys. God bless you guys. Have a wonderful week.